Ich mache mal eben kurz die Kamera hoch. Dann werde ich mal das Rollo hier hochziehen. Warum ich die Kamera hoch mache? Die halt unten rum nackt. So. Ach ja. Düb, düb, dü, lü, lüb. Ist halt warm hier drin. Ach, jetzt kann ich ihm auch mal hier die Sachen fragen.
Mr. Hamish, can you explain to us what happened to the colonial collection? It seems somewhat depleted.
But, oh, most likely maintenance work, tidying up.
You're not sure, then? But you're the deputy director.
Well, I am busy. I cannot be everywhere at once.
As deputy director, how was your relationship with Montague Dunn?
To be honest with you, Mr. Holmes, it could have been better. You see, every Tuesday he would carry out his inspection of the gardens, but it was solely to make an impression, great pretense that he cared at all. He would give out absurd orders, ignoring anyone else's opinion. He would then disappear for the rest of the week. He was what some might call a man of action. I'd say rather he was overzealous and chaotic. So after all, it was no wonder, perhaps, that he ended up like that, if you take into consideration his kind of lifestyle.
You mentioned that Mr. Dunn led a particular lifestyle.
Well, it's no secret that he enjoyed, celebrating, shall we say. He was a member of the London Smart Set. He was famous for it. That and...
And...
He had an eye for the ladies, to put it mildly, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Hamish, can you tell us who holds the keys to the locked greenhouses?
That would be Albert, Mr. Dunn's son. Yes, Albert keeps all the keys, and one can only imagine why.
What do you mean?
Well, he was never interested in Kew Gardens before, and now all of a sudden he is trying to act as if he owns the place. I think he wants to take over the management here. He'd do better to leave that to me. He has no experience. No, none at all.
What is your opinion of Albert as a student of botany?
He's useless. I often tell him so, and I can only give him cleaning tasks. Botany is not his life's work, and his father well knew it. He was furious about it.
He was?
Oh, yes. He forced his son to work here, and he never missed an opportunity to criticize him publicly.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, for example, with our last exhibition here, Mr. Dunn had Albert make a presentation speech. But then, while the lad was speaking, Mr. Dunn interrupted him, asking him difficult questions, making him look like a failure. It was with the intention of making a fool of him, Mr. Holmes.
That must have been terribly humiliating.
Yes, he was crushed, and he had to leave. Everybody was making fun of poor Albert. That is, except for Miss Margaret White, who is such a nice lady and who always takes pity on Albert.
You mentioned a Miss White. Would you tell us more about her?
She is a student who works here part-time. She is quite charming indeed. She possesses a great talent for botany. You should take a look at some of her experiments that she carried out in the laboratory. Ah, if only she were not so naive.
Why naive?
The way she used to flutter around Mr. Montague Dunn. And why, he couldn't help but be flattered by all her attention. How could an intelligent woman such as Miss White not see through his game? I can only scratch my head and wonder.
Tell me, Mr. Hamish, do you grow the more deadly variety of plant here?
You mean insectivorous? Yes, but nothing larger than that.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation.
Auf jeden Fall saftig gelogen. So, weiter geht's. Hab dich.
Who is Miss Margaret White?
Ah, she is the young lady who studies with me. She visits here sometimes to help out with the greenhouses. In fact, she should be here today. She wanted to work at the seed house. That's the small greenhouse across from the large glass house.
We noticed that a part of the colonial collection has been cleared.
Ah, at the moment I'm just dealing with the storage room. I don't know much about the other rooms.
I imagine that your relationship with your father may have been a strained one.
Yes. I cannot say that he was a kind man, for he never listened to me at all. He forced me to work here. But now, after his death, I've been pondering it over. Perhaps he wasn't so wrong about me after all. I have to follow his path, and I have to manage Kew Gardens, and I can do it. I can be as good as any other who works here.
Would you please tell us about Martin Hamish, the deputy director?
Well, I have to tell you that Mr. Hamish is not and has never been the deputy director of Kew Gardens. My father would not have tolerated it.
Indeed? That is most interesting. He told us that he was.
Yes, because he believes that the management should be passed down to him now that my father is dead. But in actual fact, Mr. Hamish only has the honour of being the garden's longest-serving employee. In fact, if we are to think logically at all, it should be me who takes over the management of Kew Gardens.
Do you not have a good relationship with Mr. Hamish?
I suppose so. But we have very little in common. Mr. Hamish loves his plants and Kew Gardens, and I cannot say that I share his passion.
I see. And how was his relationship with your father?
Oh, he hated my father. It was obvious. He would be furious whenever my father boasted of Kew Gardens in the newspapers or at conferences. He was convinced that my father was stealing all of the credit for himself. But my father treated Mr. Hamish in the same way as he treated anyone. Dismissively. With indifference.
Ja, mit dem Schlüssel.
Do you hold the keys to all of these locked doors?
Yes, you can have them. But I cannot give you the keys to the cloakroom. The employees' effects are private. I am sure
Knackig
you
das Schloss
understand.
halt.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon.
Ba, 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 ba. So, dann gehen wir erstmal zu Miss White, oder? Ne, wir gehen erstmal hier rein. Tada! Wir knacken erstmal den Safe. Ach du Scheiße. Okay, das war falsch. Zack. Wie echt so behindert, Mann? Ist ja übrigens ein mega sicherer Safe, ne? Wenn er sich so leicht knacken lässt. Werdebrief, Brief, jetzt wird gelesen.
I suggest that we don't tell Miss Margaret White about this document.
Schulden von Miss Margaret White an Mr. Montague Dunn. Vermietung einer Wohnung in Oxford. Stipendium. Kredite bei Hamilton, bei der Welligan House Schnellerei und Juwelier Barrett Sons. Okay, also hatten die schon mal eine fette Affäre. Haben miteinander gefickt. Mr. Dunn, wir bitten Sie zum letzten Mal, uns unsere lieben Schwestern zurückzugeben. Wir haben nicht das Recht, sie gefangen zu halten. Sie gehören ihnen nicht so. Ihre sogenannten Genehmigungen sind allesamt ungültig. Sie verstecken sich hinter Lügen und anderem hinter der Lüge, in die in der Presse der Vorfall vom... Okay, da müssen wir nachgucken. Aber das ist hier dieses Wappen von diesem göttlichen Scheiß. Dann keine weiteren Details sehen, was sie getan haben, ist wahrscheinlich abscheulich. Seien Sie versichert, dass wir unsere Schwestern niemals aufgeben werden. Wir haben ihnen vertraut. Die göttliche Gesellschaft. Die lieben Schwestern sind wahrscheinlich Blumen. Mein lieber Freund, erlaube mir bitte meine Enttäuschung über deinen letzten Brief zu äußern. Ich bezahle dich, damit du mich verteidigst. Und nicht, damit du mich beschuldigst. Hugh Gans, eine königliche Einrichtung. Wir erhalten die großartige Möglichkeit, die ganze Welt zu bereisen und die wertvollsten und seltenen Pflanzen zu bewahren. Unsere Aufgabe besteht darin, solche Pflanzen zu schützen. Auch und vor allem vor jenen, die mit ihnen dubiose Geschäfte machen wollen. Diese göttliche Gesellschaft, von der du schreibst, hat kein Recht, solch wertvolle Pflanzen zu erinnern. Erinnere dich bitte an den Vorfall vom 14. Juni. Aus diesem Grund möchte ich dich bei allem Respekt ein weiteres Mal bitten, Hugh Gans, die Genehmigung hinsichtlich dieser Pflanzen zu beglaubigen. Okay. Was hat schon?
A photograph of Montague Dunn and Reynold Hamish. Newspapers discussing Kew Gardens.
Neue Pflanzenart zur Belegschaft von Kew Gardens verkündet voll Stolz die Züchtung einer neuen Gerstenart, die völlig resistent gegenüber Kälte ist. Folgerichtig wurde sie sibirische Gerste getauft. Martin Hamish, der stolze Züchter der neuen Getreideart, wird am kommenden Montag eine Pressekonferenz abhalten. Liebste Margaret! Nach unserem letzten Gespräch wäre es besser, wenn du deine Arbeit hier in Kew Gardens einstellen würdest. Wie du ziemlich offen festgestellt hast, bist du ja nicht mehr auf meine Unterstützung angewiesen, denn du stehst offensichtlich auf eigenen Füßen, wie du gemeint hast. Nun gebe ich dir die Freiheit zurück. Ich wünsche dir viel Erfolg in deinem künftigen Leben. Mhm. Gehen jetzt nochmal zu den Hinweisen.
Champagne. Montague Dunn had good taste. French wine, a remarkable vintage.
gold dust. Good heavens. What's it doing here?
The gold is almost immune to chemical attacks, so it may be a valuable auxiliary for various experiments.
But why would anyone perform such experiments in a botanical garden?
There was a bottle here. It left behind a trace of the substance that pervaded the laboratory. Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around. Several drops of the bottle is no longer here, but it is possible to detect a faint scent.
Toby!
A good nose.
Toby. Was machen wir gleich?
Chemicals. A sufficient quantity for some serious experiments.
Das war's schon?
A phonograph used for voice recording. Remarkable.
Yes, this is quite a modern laboratory.
Martin Hamish's perception of plants. The notion of communication in the plant world has long been considered marginal, yet I remain convinced that some plants do indeed transmit chemical signals in the event of attack.
A study report by Martin Hamish.
And it seems clear from these multiple experiments that plants do respond to their environment and have a form of consciousness. Margaret White, February 1895. Report number 245.
Study report. I don't hear any.
Hier ist auch nichts mehr. Studienbuch.
A botany book. This student's book belongs to Albert.
Wiederholungsjahr.
Locked.
Holmes, Albert Dunn didn't give us the key to this door.
It does not matter. We will open it.